Hi, everybody. Martin Root with Project Heaven on Earth, and I'm here with a new old friend,
Oh,
Charles. Yes, you are old, even though we're new. Charles Tchoreret,
that's right.
originally from Gabon in Africa, now living in Montreal. Charles, tell me a little bit about you, first of all, who you are, what you do.
Well, like you said, my name is Charles Tchoreret, right? Just to make sure that the name is pronounced properly. I'm originally from Gabon, like you said, and all my career, I worked for Shell International, and I worked in different countries around the world. I worked in Holland for a few years, exactly 4 years. I worked in Nigeria for 6 years, and I also worked in Oman for back and forth, for around 2 years. So my life was more like my corporate life, more into the oil and gas industry, where I spent 25 years of my life. I have a family. I was married. My wife first passed away almost 3 years ago. I got 4 kids, all adults. So, and I'm living in Montreal. I'm in Montreal, working for myself, writing books and speaking on stage, and just helping my wife as well, my new wife, Carol.
Yes.
Was going to We're going to start a business together on African fashion and accessories. Things are going well, I would say. Things are going well. Yes, I'm very happy.
So we met a couple of months ago.
Yes.
I was doing a webinar for a dear friend of mine, Raymond Aaron, in Toronto via Skype. I talked about heaven on earth, and you lit up. Tell us what was going on in your head, why you lit up.
I mean, when I heard you talking about heaven on earth, and what came into my mind is my project, which is the Greatness Trilogy. And I always thought of finding a way to connect that with Africa. Because what I see about my continent, especially my country, is like we have poor leadership. And I thought that we needed to have something to make people realize that something has to change, something has to be different. And when you came up with this heaven on earth concept, I thought to myself, wow, this really fits very well with the Greatness Trilogy. And I told myself, what if Africa was to become again the heaven on earth that she is? And we went from there, and then I presented my project, because you ask all the participants, if you have anything that's bigger than yourself that you want to share with the class, just stand up and share it. And I stood up and I shared my project, and he said, Charles, that's really great. I'm with you on this one. So it went from there.
And tell us a little bit about the Greatness Trilogy, because I think that's very key here. You're very concerned and committed to the notion of greatness in individuals and now a continent, your continent. Tell us about the trilogy and greatness.
The Greatness Trilogy is made up of three key elements: leadership, leadership in terms of your ability to take care of yourself, not only in terms of what you learn, but the way you behave, the way you interact with other people. How do you take the lead in everything that you do? How do you set a good example in the eyes of people? And the second element is fitness. Fitness not only physically, but also mentally. What is it that you feed into your mind? What is it that you learn? Are you in a process of, or are you on a continuous learning process? Or do you are just happy what you learned in school and that's it? You think that no, learning is for younger people? Because I believe that we can learn at any age. So fitness is very important, physically and mentally. And finally, the very important element, I think that should even be the first element, is spirituality. Because I believe that when you are a good leader, people start looking at you in a different way. People start, almost like, worshiping you in a way, because they see you as a person who can make a difference in their life. And as a human being, it's easy for your ego to flare up. And spirituality is the element that calms you down, that keeps you rooted, that makes you understand that you're doing it not for yourself, but for people around you. And then you become conscious of that, and you become humble, because you know that you have a mission. That's when you start understanding why you're here on this planet Earth, to make a difference in people's life. And then you don't take it for yourself. It's more like, what can I do when I wake up every morning? What can I do to impact people, to change the life of one person at a time? So that's what spirituality for me is very important element.
I love it. I love the idea of greatness, and I love the three elements that you've put together in it. And then when you spoke in the class about Africa, and you came up with this idea, and there is actually now a Facebook, we're going to put that up, Africa, a heaven on earth continent. Now, folks, we have had people in heaven on earth who've done work on their nation. People have taken on their nation to be a heaven on earth nation. Austria, Denmark, Hungary, Croatia, Mexico. I and a group of people have taken on the Canadian province of Prince Edward Island as Canada's first heaven on earth province. But no one, Charles, until you, took on an entire continent. And when you begin to look at Africa, one of the things that I see is, oh my God, there's such poor leadership. Stuff really isn't working. And what you made me do, because this really struck a deep chord in me, so I invite people to go to the Facebook page and look at Africa, a heaven on earth continent. And I've been finding all of these references to heaven on earth from groups and people in Africa that I didn't know, that Charles didn't know. And it all of a sudden, out of that declaration that you made, Charles, and then I jumped in on, it's beginning to happen. So talk about, the problems in Africa and that you see. Well, let's talk about that. For example, I think about Eastern Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, all the rapes there, the pillage, terrible, the Hutus and the Tutsi in Rwanda, the massacres. There is a bloody history in this continent, and yet. So talk about what hasn't worked and what you see beginning to work and what you think needs to work.
I think the problem of the continent, the African continent, is the poor leadership. For some reason, for centuries now, the African continent, and especially the French-speaking part of Africa, has been under superpowers control, like France, Germany, England, etc. And what I found very sad is, like, when those countries became independent, I wouldn't even call it independence, more like an independence that was determined by the colonizer. They came into power, and they were the role that they had that were given to them is to preserve the interest of the former superpower, those superpowers, to make sure that the interest remains intact on the continent. So they put people who could just work for them, and people who had no interest for the people of Africa. And today we see again, many African countries are people who stay in powers for 30, 40 years, and after they leave power, is the son that takes over. It becomes like a family business. And obviously, when you behave that way, you know that there's no challenge. You kill the dream of the people to see something different in their own country, to see how they can actually contribute to the country. So they just lose interest in anything to do with politics, which is very sad. And of course, money is behind all that, because the amount of money that's being stolen by people in power is just simply sad. It's really sad to see. And I think that what the African continent needs, starting from the grassroots, we need to bring people to understand that Africa is indeed a heaven on earth continent. With or without the Africans, Africa will always be a heaven on earth continent. This is what the Chinese, the French, the English, the Canadian, they understand that. They know the value of Africa, but the Africans are just missing the point. They still can't see how important that continent is. It's time for you to reconcile themselves with Africa, the heaven on earth continent, and their current mindset. We need to have a complete change of paradigm in Africa, where people will start thinking in terms of the blessing that they have to be living on that continent that's got so much potential. They need to reconcile themselves with that reality, and that's where the work has to be done. And I think the only way to make it happen is going to be through education, not only of the people of Africa, just people in the grassroots, but also the leaders of the countries, to see how we can identify a country where we could start the process, or I can start the process with my team, to see how we can start spreading it all over Africa through videos, through any means that we can find to make people understand that something has to change in Africa.
I remember when I took on Prince Edward Island as Canada's first heaven on earth province, the first thing I did, Charles, when I got the notion, was to say it, to declare it. And I think that's the initial power here in this process, in this project, which is you, I, others who have been joining us have declared Africa a heaven on earth continent. That's step one. And now, what would you say to people who are watching this who are in Africa, and to those who have never been to Africa or have nothing to do with Africa? Just, we can't think of it just as them over there. Address both people, those in Africa and those outside.
Something I want to tell people all over the world. It doesn't matter whether you were born in Africa. That's not what makes you an African. You can have Africa born in you. You have Africa in your heart. That actually makes you you can be counted on to actually work on whatever it will take to make Africa grow to become the heaven on earth is supposed to be. And I think that anybody is entitled to that. Like you, Martin, what you do is fantastic. The interest that you have on the African continent is simply amazing. More than some African people born on the continent would even have. You have it. So for me, you are an African. Not because you were born there, because you have African born in you. And this is what counts. People who love Africa can all get involved in this project that I'm trying to put in place.
And so what would be a thank you for the acknowledgement? And I think the example is true. I've been in Africa once, to South Africa. No, excuse me, I also went to Morocco. Just when you said it, Charles, it just lit a spark in me. And I'm amazed that, because many people come to me with their heaven on earth projects, but this one, something really rung a bell deep in my soul. Maybe it's the birthplace of all of us, right? Africa is the birthplace of humanity. A lot of people think. Garden of Eden could have been there. What else? What else could we do? So we invite people to go to the Facebook page, Africa, a Heaven on Earth Continent. Tell us what you can do, what simple little things you could do. And I also see this as an example for other continents. If you're listening in South America, North America, Asia, you can say, what, can't my continent be a heaven on earth? Yes, it can as well. What advice, what requests would you have of those watching?
I would tell the African people that no, you should not despair. You're still alive, you're still breathing. So I believe that there's still hope for you, for us Africans, to see the prosperity of that continent. It's possible for us to make it happen every single day. And something I was thinking about the other day, I told myself, wow, this project is so huge. I might not even be the one to make it actually happen. I'm just starting something that's going to continue to grow.
Yes.
And someone will take, my dream is to see someone else, everybody just embracing the project and make it move forward. And for us to see that difference we want to see in Africa, because Africa is an amazing continent. People have such good heart. They're so generous. And just to tell you a quick story, when I was in Holland, I was working in Holland. I worked there for 4 years. I met this young Dutch guy. I went to a shop to buy some stuff, and he told me, "Where are you from?" I said, "Oh, I'm from Gabon." He said, "Oh, I passed by very nearby your country. I went to the Congo." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Okay, it's amazing. I left Holland with my backpack, hitchhiking all the way to Africa. I didn't have any penny in my pocket, but in every single home, always had a plate, something to eat. Someone was always inviting me in their home to eat." I said, "This is what Africa is all about. People are generous. People have a good heart. People are always so welcoming." Maybe this is why colonization was so easy, because they're so welcoming. It made it so easy. That's the flip side of it. So, but Africa is a good continent. People have a good heart, and I think we want to continue to do that. And I believe that we all have to get into this project and to make it happen. So, first of all, I want to encourage people to go into the Facebook group, to join in, to give their contribution. Anything that can promote the African continent is welcome, because we want to see a different story. We want to write a different story of Africa, not just kids starving, shacks, and all those negative things that the West wants to portray about Africa. Africa, there's another side to Africa. We should look deep into people's heart, the beauty of people, what they can actually do, the things they do every day, and we'll be amazed to see what Africa can contribute to this world.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you for those watching. Please, what's one simple thing that you can do today to make Africa a heaven on earth continent. Thank you, Charles, very much for this wonderful interview and for you being in the world.
Thank you, Martin, for having me. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.